The pen scratched across the paper, while Elena kept her hand steady and the city did its bright, indifferent work outside the glass. "Don't read it, Victor." His voice low enough that the room held it like a temperature. Betrayal tightened Elena's throat before she could place it. She felt the word as a physical thing, a taste of metal at the back of her tongue, a quick hollow under her ribs. The contract lay flat under the lamp's rim light. She signed. She left Victor's corner office with the thin leather organizer heavier than when she walked in. The elevator ding sounded ordinary. The hallway smelled of coffee and polished floor wax. Elena pressed her thumb to the small birthmark near her jaw and tried to sort what had happened into steps she could explain at home. Her brother's night light would be on. She thought about the thin wedding band on her right hand, inherited from their mother, and told herself she could explain the late hour. At the bus stop she read the street names to count beats. 33rd and LaSalle. 30 seconds. Her fingers tapped the organizer the way she tapped a pen when nervous. She would check the attachment once she was alone. Her suspicion had shifted into a quiet plan: find a safe corner, read, decide. At her apartment, the kitchen light made a small square on the table. The city muffled beyond the window. Elena balanced the organizer on her knees, flipped to the back, and found an extra sheet tucked beneath a manila clip. She folded it open. Clause after clause marched in legal language. The font felt foreign, too small for the moment it carried. Her eyes caught the line that named a spouse. The sentence tied her signature to a legal arrangement that read like a marriage contract. She read it twice. Betrayal tightened again, then slid into cold fear. The word aloud, Mara, and the name sounded like an accusation. She thumbed the thin band on her right hand until the metal grew warm. Her brother would be asleep upstairs, homework and a small mug of milk cooling on the counter. Elena breathed, then dialed Mara Quinn's office number with fingers that stuttered. Mara answered on the second ring. "Mara Quinn," she said, clipped and steady. "Elena didn't wait to arrange pleasantries. You put my name on a marriage contract." Elena, calm down. Mara, sit down. "Tell me where you are." Elena sat, though she didn't feel the charmy apartment. "I signed under Victor's lamp at 10:30. He mean not to read it." There was a pause on the other end, a small organizing silence. "Bring the document in first thing." "I'll look at it." "Mara, don't tell anyone. Do you understand?" The line went quiet before she could ask why. Elena's suspicion slid into something sharper, the sense that she had been moved like a piece on a board. She placed the contract back into the organizer and lay awake until her brother's breathing evened. Morning arrived with a gray slice of light. Elena washed leftover coffee from last night and stood in front of the mirror. Her hair sat in soft waves. Her uniform muted navy skirt, cream blouse felt like a borrowed armor. She remembered the way Victor watched her in the office, measured, quiet, eyes that held more than words. The city towered outside, glass faces catching the meager sun. She carried the organizer like a petition and took the elevator to the mid-level floor where the legal team worked. Mara's office was glass-fronted and efficient. Papers sat in small, strict stacks. Mara wore her hair in a sleek, low bun and the thin framed glasses that made her face an instrument of attention. Her voice was cool. "Elena, sit. Show me the page." Elena slid the paper across the desk. "It was nothing important," she said. Her voice rose and dropped in the same sentence. The words because they had been said to her. She waited for a softening. Mara's face tightened. "Mara, read fast. This was not supposed to be signed by you," she said. "This is a stopgap. It binds a protective arrangement for the Hale family. It was meant to be unsigned until the right party could be found." So what? Elena started. The word cut out. She felt a shift, suspicion into slow-burning dread. "So what does it mean for me, Mara?" Mara's fingers folded the corner of a document. "If it stands, this clause gives a spouse's legal status in a way that blocks a specific claim against the company. It was a mistake for you to sign, but mistakes happen. We can redact it. We can file a motion to annul. But there are costs, public costs." Exposure costs. You knew I would sign a paper Victor hands me at 10:30. Elena Mara, who else knows about this? Mara's eyes didn't widen. Victor knows. I'm taking responsibility for damage control. But Elena, you must understand, the family succession is under threat. We could be dragged into a legal fight that would cost millions and open bank records. Elena's fear and outrage slid into a new emotion. Anger sharpened into fuel. She stood. You will not make this my responsibility without options. Mara's reply was precise. Will offer you options. You will come to a meeting this afternoon. Bring the organizer. When Elena left the office, the corridor seemed to narrow. She almost ran into Victor as she turned the corner. He stood with his overcoat on, a fountain pen balanced like a small weight in his hand. Elena, he said. He did not smile. He did not move closer. Walk with me. They crossed the glass lobby in silence until he led her to the lower corridor and stop at your signed. He said he told you not to read it. Why would you tell me that? Elena, her voice had the thin edge of someone keeping tears from spilling. She could feel the trembling in her jaw. She kept her hands folded over the organizer as if it were a fragile object. Victor's voice was careful. Not everything in the company files is for every pair of eyes, Elena. That was a pragmatic instruction. Pragmatic for whom? She demanded. He put both palms on the railing and looked out at the city blocks. For the company. For the family. This is my life you're talking about, she said. She kept the words tight. Several feet of marble and glass separated them, but there was an edge like metal between them. Victor, this names me as a spouse. It names me to legal obligations I never agreed to. Victor did not apologize. He inclined his head. There are nuances to protect before a public filing. You should have been told. I'm sorry. The instruction came as an order. She felt anger shift again, fuel into refusal, not an apology. Not sorry. I want this fixed. Fixing comes with trade-offs, he said. If the clause is annulled, the legal exposure returns to the family. If it remains, the exposure is contained. Martha's suit could place the company at risk. Elena, the name aloud without remembering why it mattered. Victor watched the reaction. The air between them tightened. Elena's hands went cold. This moment moved her from raw reaction to a decision posture. Figure out the options. Refused to be the only one carrying the cost. At noon she went to Mara's glass-fronted room again. Mara set 3 files on the table and pushed a small coffee toward her. Elena, Mara, we present 2 clean paths. 1. We annul the clause and prepare for a public defense. 2. You sign a temporary, defined arrangement that keeps the claim quiet while we resolve succession. You choose. Mara's voice was efficient. Elena's mouth went dry. You can't ask me to sign my name to something like that without consent, Mara. You can't make a spouse of me. Mara's eyes were level. You signed. You made that first act. Now the legal framework recognizes the signature. The company can fight to annul, but I'm advising caution. Victor has already said it's easier for everyone if the paperwork stands while we handle the challenge. Quietly there was a quick exchange. Elena's disbelief. Mara's clinical reminders. The rattle of a pen. For the first time since the night, Elena felt a small, unexpected movement in the building of power. She was not the only agent in the room. Victor's name had weight, Mara's method had weight, and Elena's signature had weight. She a direct question. If I sign this temporary arrangement today, what do I get? Mara named it. Confidentiality terms, a measured stipend, a clause that promised no public marriage ceremony, promised no relocation. The words were transactional. You get money to secure your household for as long as it takes. Mara. And we remove the immediate threat of public litigation. Elena pictured her brother's desk lamp, his homework, the rent check due next month. The hunger for stability is a practical thing. It made a different argument now. Her emotion shifted, from feeling betrayed to weighing survival. She again, louder. What if I refuse? Mara spoke plainly. If you refuse, Victor can deny intent, and we fight to annul. The family may open their books. There will be depositions, subpoenas. The company will mount a legal defense that places you in the middle of discovery. Elena's jaw clenched. The image Mara painted was concrete courtrooms, stacks of documents, the firm release of phone records. Each concrete element pushed at her like a tide. She had a decision to make, but she also wanted more facts, time, a lawyer she could trust. The conversation broke with a short instruction. Mara, you will meet Victor at his office at 3. We will outline terms. Decide beforehand whether you want counsel. After she left, Eleanor's phone buzzed. A single message from Victor. Meet at 3. No signature. She could have refused. She did not. She had questions that required his presence. The corridor to his office felt empty until she pushed through the heavy door and found him behind the desk, the city glinting at his back. Victor's chair was high-backed. He kept his hands folded on the desk. Elena, he said, come in. Sit. She sat. The desk smelled faintly of bergamot and paper. On one corner lay the fountain pen he used like a paperweight. For a moment she watched his hands and their precise gesture. He unfolded a single sheet and placed it between them. Read it now, he said. Elena did. The temporary arrangement was a formal legal instrument, dates, obligations, a confidentiality clause, and a line that made clear the company's obligations in return. There was a sub-clause that required her cooperation in preserving privacy. There was also a final paragraph that read like an ultimatum. Either she accepted the temporary arrangement and an agreed amount of compensation, or the company would proceed to annul and expose the matter to a pending challenge from an outside claimant. She felt the room tilt. Not physically. The word for the sensation was not needed. She had to keep her faculties to argue. Victor, I didn't consent to any marriage. I signed a paper. I can sign a paper to protect my family, but I need guarantees in writing. I will not be treated like collateral. He met her gaze. For the first time since she had met him, there was a subtle loosening at the corner of his mouth. Elena, he said, no one intends to use you as collateral. But the company faces a legal challenger who may force disclosure of assets. You can help us contain that. She steadied herself. Her voice was even, but there was a line of iron behind it. What I need is a written guarantee that this stops at the paperwork and that no private action changes my life beyond what's written here. No relocation, no spouse duties, no public claim, and I will consult counsel before I sign. Victor considered. He tapped his pen against the wood. You will have counsel. You will also understand the timeline. This is not indefinite. 6 months. If we succeed, it ends. If we lose, we renegotiate. There was a quick exchange. 3 lines of rapid negotiation. Elena's demand for counsel, Victor's insistence on a confidentiality clause, and his quiet admission that the family could not risk an open fight. The back and forth had the brittle energy of a negotiation, where each side could cut the other. Then he offered an ultimatum: sign the temporary arrangement with counsel present at the legal office, and the company will ensure no public filing. Refuse, and the company will pursue annulment immediately, which will trigger discovery and likely public attention. This will affect your family. Mara's voice came on the speaker before Elena could reply. Elena, we've prepared a confidentiality and counsel clause. We will not file anything public while negotiations are ongoing. We need your answer today. Elena's hands trembled. She thought of her brother's crooked crayon drawing, the rent due, the phone calls she skipped. She thought of Victor's watch and Mara's folders. She thought of the night lamp in her brother's room. She had to decide. Her decision slid from confusion into resolve. I will consult counsel. She said, he will not sign until I hear from a lawyer, but I will meet with your counsel first. I need that guarantee in writing. Victor's eyes narrowed in a way that was not entirely unfriendly. You will have it. Come to the legal office at 4. Bring your organizer. Elena left the room with the copy of the temporary arrangement tucked under her arm. In the elevator she could feel the weight of the paper like a small stone. Her emotion had shifted again, from betrayal to fear to anger to worry, calculation. She would consult a lawyer. She would not be pushed into a life she had not chosen. In the lobby she stopped and dialed a bar association number she'd saved months ago in case of emergencies. She had to find someone who would meet that afternoon. The receptionist told her an attorney could take a brief call. She left a message and waited for a call back. On the street, the sky had gone the color of an old coin. The city felt ordinary to passers-by, but Elena's day had rearranged itself. She pressed her thumb to her wedding not wedding band, felt the metal and the small ridge where the band had worn thin. It was a small anchor. She had a plan: meet counsel, read every line, refuse coercion. That night she sat by her kitchen window and placed the copy of the contract on the table. She set an alarm for 3 in the morning to wake and read again if she had to. The city lights blinked. At dawn she would walk to the legal office with counsel if needed. The immediate battle of the day had been pushed forward but not resolved. She closed the organizer and, before sleep took her, she wrote a short note to herself: find counsel, secure the household, do not sign a loan. The paper on the table was concrete. It closed the chapter with a clear action dawn, a call to a lawyer, and the decision to take steps that could save her family from discovery. That was the thing she could act on now, and she acted. Elena left the contract on the kitchen table and dialed the attorney's number again. The call connected. She spoke into the phone and listed the meeting time she could make in the afternoon. When she hung up, the sun had lifted enough to warm the window frame. She picked up the copy of the contract once more, smoothed the corner with her thumb, and looked out at the tower where Victor's office caught the light. The chapter of the day had closed with motion, a meeting scheduled, counsel on the way, and a walk toward the legal office at 4. That concrete plan stood in place of a promise. The city kept going, and Elena moved with it. An unmarked envelope slid under Elena's apartment door and landed against her shoe just after 6 a.m. She froze, mug half raised, because envelopes rarely arrived at her building, and because she had not ordered anything expensive. Betrayal shot through Elena. She felt the word in her throat and reached down with fingers that trembled. She opened the flap with the corner of a spoon, pulled out a glossy copy of the contract, and saw her own signature on the last page. Her first motion was to stare at the signature. The letters same, the small curl on the E she had written, that curl in the Hale office at midnight. The pen scratching across paper while the city lit itself outside the glass. She remembered the pressure in Victor's voice then. Don't read it. She remembered the room temperature that held that sentence like a presence. That memory had been recorded in the previous night's echo. Now the glossy paper made it real and immediate. She set the contract on the kitchen table and spread it open with 2 hands. The kitchen was small, the kettle still warm from boiling water for tea, a stack of unpaid bills by the sink. The contract's language was dense and clinical at first, but a bold clause caught her eye on the second page: a marriage condition. A legal definition of temporary arrangement tying her to the Hale family estate unless she accepted specific, humiliating terms. Elena read the sentence twice, then aloud, because the idea of words existing on paper felt safer. If spoken, it can't be real, she said to the empty room. The sentence left her mouth in a flat line. She heard the familiar, careful cadence of her voice, as if her throat was protecting her from the meaning. The paper did not change. She flattened both palms on the table and felt the wood grain under her fingers, grounding herself. Fear came next, quick, sharp, the fear of losing everything she had been trying to hold steady for her brother. She forced herself into action. Elena took out her thin leather organizer and flipped to a page where she wrote reminders: rent, groceries, Marcus' school permission slip. She circled legal and wrote, must ask Mara. Naming Mara Quinn produced a small, automatic tightening across Elena's shoulders. Mara's efficiency had helped Elena before. Mara had also moved that midnight file into her queue, according to the log on Elena's terminal. The discovery of the contract changed the log from clerical error into a potential trap. Elena dressed without thinking about style: muted navy blouse, simple gold locket, hair tucked behind one ear. She left the contract folded on the kitchen table like evidence. on the walk to Hale & Co. The city made its routine noises, a delivery truck, a man shouting after a taxi, doors that clicked and swung. Concrete sounds. Elena held the contract under her arm like a hot object and rehearsed what she would say to Mara. She would ask for a copy. She would demand to know how her signature had been used. She would ask, plainly, who put this in my name? At the lobby, the security guard glanced at Elena's head and at the folder that spilled a corner of glossy paper. Morning, Ms. Park, he said. Quinn me to expect you. The name reached Elena like a small smack. She did not answer. The elevator rose, glass reflecting her face and the contract's edge. Each floor passed like a beat. When she stepped into legal, Mara's desk was a measured point of calm, neat stacks, a smartwatch face tilted toward her, a leather briefcase shut under the desk. Mara looked up without surprise. Elena, she said he was about to call you. Sit. Her voice was brisk. Her eyes slid over the contract like they already understood its contents. Elena set the folder down and pushed it toward Marathis. Was under my door. Elena, me name is on it. I did not. You signed it at midnight, Mara interrupted, tapping a finger against the edge. She kept her voice low. You signed when Mir. Hail you to Elena's mouth opened. Don't read it. She finished, the phrase from the night returning with a new edgy me not to read it and to sign. Me it wasn't important. Mara did not look startled. Instead she closed the folder and organized a stack of papers until her hands were steady. That was a mistake in writing, Elena. The document should not have been in your queue. Legally you mustn't keep it. It creates exposure for you, and for us her sentences came clipped, efficient. She leaned forward. Do you understand what a binding clause like this can do? Elena felt the floor of the conversation fall away. Do you mean it binds me to marry someone? She asked, because saying the blunt sentence made the hazard concrete. Mara's mouth tightened. It secures and hair and prevents scandal if mésalliances threaten the family's stability. It is not uncommon in our situations. It is not for you, not for me. Then why is my name on it? Elena demanded. Her hands tapped a pen against the organizer. The nervous motion made the partner across from her look up. Mara stared at the signature on the copy. Elena slid toward her. It appears, she said slowly, choosing words as one chooses surgical instruments, that the document moved into a lower priority queue overnight. It was misfiled. The signature is genuine. We will have to correct the record. She folded her hands, keeping this document is risky for you. Return it to me. Elena pushed back in the chair. Return it. You want me to hand over the only proof I have that I didn't agree to this? Her voice rose. The room's glass walls swallowed the sound. The accusation came out in short lines. Mara, your team sent it to me. Your log shows it. Her hands found the edge of the table. Mara reached under the desk and retrieved a tablet. Sliding it across the server. Log shows a reroute. Yes. A clerk's mistake, but there is more going on. Mr. Hale will not want this discussed. He will not want you to make a public claim. Do you understand the stakes? Elena, the word stakes as if testing it. Fear and something like anger shifted under her ribs, changing the way she breathed. She thought of her brother Marcus' face when the lights went out for unpaid bills, the way he tucked his blanket over his shoulder, and the stakes multiplied into familiar, daily losses. She swallowed. What does he want me to do? She asked. Mara's eyes were a plain slate. He has asked that the contract not be discussed. He does not want this clause public. A quick clatter at the glass corridor announced Victor Hale. Victor came without flourish. He cut through the reception area in a long overcoat and set his fountain pen-like object down on Mara's desk as if it were a paperweight. His presence narrowed the room. Elena felt him close without seeing him first. His steel grey eyes met hers through the glassums. Park. Victor stepped into the corridor. His voice was precise and contained the old command she remembered from the signature night. He did not smile. Elena folded her hands as if to hold herself together and followed. In the glass corridor, sunlight stripped the building of its morning haze. Victor took the contract from Mara's tray with one gloved hand. He did not look at Alina when he said, "You signed it." The sentence landed like a fact. "You mean not to read it?" Alina replied. Her voice was small but firm. "You mean it wasn't important?" She moved closer, because moving felt active. Victor's eyes held her. "You signed under instruction. I do not ask employees to sign without reason, but this document must not leave corporate channels. Return it to Mara. Why is my name on a contract that binds me to marriage?" Elena demanded. "Who wrote that clause?" Victor's jaw tightened. For the first time since she had met him, Elena noticed an almost imperceptible fissure along his left eyebrow, the thin scar that broke his otherwise controlled face. He breathed and said, "There are reasons in the family that you do not need to know. This document secures an heir if necessary. It creates a path that prevents scandal, so you're asking me to accept a path you wrote for someone else," Elena replied. Her hands found the locket at her throat and fingers tightened on it. The object steadied her. Victor looked at Mara, and Mara's expression did not change. "This was never meant to be in Ms. Park's hands. It was routed incorrectly. That is a mistake. But the signature is valid. We can offer a sealed temporary arrangement to protect Ms. Park and her brother while the error is corrected. Or we can pursue motions that will make securing housing, guardianship, and income far more complicated for Ms. Park." The corridor felt thin and bright. Elena's stomach knotted. Her fear turned to a new shape decision. She could imagine legal motions that would drag her income, her landlord notices, an unrelenting audit into her life. She could imagine being forced into something she had not chosen to protect herself and Marcus. The choice was immediate and ugly. "You can't force me into anything," she said. "You can't threaten my brother like this." Mara's voice was flat. "Can make things difficult. Not because we want to punish you, Elena, but because the company has to protect itself. If you accept a temporary arrangement, we will create safeguards for your brother's stability for 6 months. If you refuse, legal remedies will follow to protect the estate. The court favors the family's interests in these matters." Elena's mind raced through numbers, bills, and the calendar. She imagined 6 months, a strange span that could save them or trap them. She heard Marcus' laugh echo from the previous evening when he came back with a drawing of a blue car. The small paper promised a future that required steady rent and afternoon care. Elena closed her eyes for half a second, tasting metalli. "Need time," she said finally. "Need until tonight. I need to speak with my brother, and think." Victor considered. "Harry will be given that time," he said, "but know this. Delaying too long will allow outside counsel to file motions that make reversing this difficult. This is not a negotiation that favors unprepared parties." Mara slid a small card toward Elena with terms of temporary safety housing, a payroll hold, basic guardianship allowances for Marcus. The numbers were clear and clinical. Elena read them and found, beneath the legal language, small protections that could keep rent paid and ensure Marcus remained in his school. She felt gratitude flicker, immediately followed by shame. She had always promised herself she would not trade dignity for security. Now the choice took shape in ledger entries and a notarized clause. Elena left the building with a brittle calm. The city seemed louder on the walk home, a child crying, a cyclist ringing a bell, someone calling out a delivery address. She held the folded card and the memory of Victor's eyes like a pressure point behind her forehead. She had 2 choices with a deadline. The knowledge changed the geometry of her day into a route she had to follow. At noon she returned to Mara's glass office for a private explanation. Mara closed the blinds and moved a kettle to boil water. "Listen, Marath clause's purpose is to prevent scandal by providing a legally binding placeholder. It is a safeguard when the family faces a threat of public exposure. It is designed to lock a public narrative that contains an hair-like figure without contest." Elena tightened her lips. "So it's an insurance policy. Why my name?" Mara's hands found a small file. "Your signature was convenient. You were present at midnight. Mr. Hale needed documents signed and chose you. That was a mistake. It was careless. But the signature is valid. The way out will require discretion for whom? Elena, for me or for them? Mara looked at her long enough for Elena to sense a calculation for both. If we handle it correctly, if you agree to a temporary arrangement, we create a public posture that prevents immediate legal inquiry. If you refuse, we will have to protect the estate with action that may involve asset freezes and subpoenas. That will drag your finances into public record. Elena's hands moved without permission. She pressed the thin band on her right hand, the wedding, not wedding band from her mother, and felt the cool metal. Its presence was a small, stubborn tether to a life she had chosen, honest work, modest rent, a brother who trusted her. It grounded her when Mara's words pushed at her edges. She who will I be arranged to marry? Mara's expression flickered, a professional wing raising that information is not yet public. The arrangement names an hair proxy. You would not be marrying a stranger in the usual sense. It is a legal posture. Elena pressed her lips together. She imagined a name, a face, and felt a swell of anger. This is wrong. She said it is wrong to sign someone into a life without consent. Mara's voice softened in a measured "Why? Understand your anger, Elena. But understand the alternative. We can provide a buffer, an official statement that you accepted a temporary role to protect your brother while we correct the record. It will require performance of certain public duties and restrictions on travel." Anger shifted to a different weight. Negotiation. Elena began to think in terms of trade-offs, of small clauses that could be written to protect Marcus but limit intrusion into her private life. She questions how long, who would manage the estate, what public presence would be required, and whether the contract could be nullified if certain conditions were met. Mara answered most questions with conditional language. You can limit the time frame. We can write in provisions for termination if certain benchmarks are met. We will need your cooperation on appearances. You will have counsel present when required. The idea is to prevent a scandal from escalating in litigation that would dismantle your life at 3 in the afternoon. Victor called Elena into his office for the ultimatum. The office sat high above the skyline, glass framing the city. He closed the door and folded the contract into his desk drawers. "Park," he said, "this is not a pleasant situation. I will offer terms for a temporary arrangement that protect your brother and keep your employment intact. You accept, you sign an addendum today, you receive protections. You refuse, and counsel will file motions that will complicate your legal standing and your finances. Which do you choose?" Elena's throat felt raw. "How long is temporary?" she asked. She named Marcus again. Have to think of Marcus. Victor placed a document on the desk with a pen that looked like the one he'd used the night before. 6 months, with review at 2 months. Housing and payroll will be secured. Public statements will be managed. You will not be asked to undertake anything the company cannot document. You will maintain guardianship of your brother. During that period, Elena read the page. Her finger tracked the clauses. There were safeguards, conditional release on specific fiscal milestones, a clause that allowed outside counsel to audit the terms, a provision for health care and schooling funds. The legal language was tight, but the human terms were visible underneath. Elena felt both trapped and relieved. She could see a path that kept Marcus safe. "If I sign, will I lose my job?" she asked. Victor shook his head. "On Sino. You will remain on payroll and receive certain protections. You will also be required to keep certain appearances." Elena's next reaction surprised her, a small, stubborn defiance. She had not wanted to be chosen for such a role, but she also refused to be passive. "Then I will require counsel. She said he will require a notarized agreement that permits me to revoke this if certain conditions occur. I will require that Marcus' schooling remain unbroken." Victor watched her carefully. "Those are negotiable points," he said. "Mara can draft them. But understand this, Ms. Park, the longer you delay, the more likely outside counsel will seek remedies that complicate reversal." Elena for time until dusk. She left Hale & Co. with a temporary truce negotiated into existence, safeguards on Marcus, a 6-month horizon, and an agreement that Mara would draft specific limiting clauses. Mara promised to call a notary and to have a draft ready by evening. Elena believed her because Mara had been precise at every measured step. Back at her apartment, Elena spread the contract on the balcony table and read the clauses aloud to herself. The wind sifted through her hair and made the pages flutter. She checked each legal checkpoint and underlined phrases that mattered: temporary review, financial safeguards. She wrote notes in the margin in small, neat handwriting she used for work. Each note felt like building a ladder out of a pit. She placed Marcus' drawing on the table beside the contract blue car, two stick figures, and felt the smallest, fierce thing, the need to keep a child's life ordinary. She slid the contract into a drawer and put the drawing on top, a deliberate gesture that kept both danger and hope visible. She breathed and let her shoulders lower for now. She reached for the drawer, fingers grazing the contract beneath the drawing. And then she moved to open the door. Emotion root, betrayal. Emotion shifts, betrayal, fear, decision, cautious defiance. The episode closed with a concrete beat and a clear direction for the next steps. Mara will draft limiting terms. Victor has offered an ultimatum with protections. Elena must choose by nightfall with Marcus' stability at stake. Elena slammed the contract onto the boardroom table and looked straight at Victor Hale. Betrayal burned through her first breath. The emotion root was betrayal, and it pushed her forward. "What is this?" she said, voice tight and held steady so the room had to listen. Within 3 seconds, the raised heads, the quiet cause, the choked attempts at control became a concrete audience for one very small woman and the paper she had not meant to sign. She did not pause to explain. Elena held the contract up so the overhead lights skated over the ink. Board members leaned back in leather chairs. Mara Quinn stepped forward, hands at her sides, rigid. Security stood with the practiced calm of men who had been told to expect anything. Elena had come straight from her desk. She had not planned a scene. She had planned a question and an answer. The opening few minutes forced everything into the open: the midnight signature, the envelope on her doorstep at 6 a.m. The sleepless hours of replaying Victor's low command to "Don't read it." She had the paper now. The stakes were visible to everyone: a legal tie, a name, the potential marriage clause that could alter her life and her brother's safety. Victor's face was the same controlled mask the company press photos showed, but his eyes tightened. "Elena," he said, level and careful, "put the contract down." This is not the time. His voice was authority, not explanation. The boardroom went silent again. The elevator hushed before something expensive breaks. Elena moved before thought, untied the knots in her chest. "No," she said, "this is the time. I signed this at midnight because you told me to. You mean not to read it? Why would I sign a marriage clause for someone I've never met?" Her fingers closed on the paper so the crease bit the skin. Mara found an angle first. "Park, please stand down. We can handle this privately. You are disrupting a shareholders' meeting." Her tone was flat, efficient. She believed in containment. Mara's eyes flicked to Victor and back to Elena, measuring damage like a surgeon mapping a wound. The first emotion shift came fast. Elena's suspicion hardened into anger. She stepped out from behind the table so her name could not be lost in a body of people. "Mara," she said, forcing the counsel's name into the room, "you put an envelope under my door tonight. Did you think I wouldn't notice?" Her jaw worked. The board members watched the exchange like a pair of boxers circling. Mara's hand went to her briefcase. "An envelope can be many things. She said you should let us." She was cut off by a board member clearing his throat and tapping a tablet. Papers rustled. Victor's fingers drummed once on the tabletop, precise and slow. He did not stand. A man in the back of the room, a senior director, finally said Victor's name aloud. "Victor, this contract shows Elena Park as a signatory to a contingency clause that seems to commit her to a marriage arrangement. How is that possible?" His voice made the legal problem a public thing. Victor stood then. The motion was controlled. It filled the room in a way his silence had not. He removed his bespoke overcoat and folded it across a chair. There is no marriage. He said that clause is a contingency for a different situation. Park signed a standard confidentiality form with an initial at the bottom. There has been a mistake. His eyes did not leave Elena. Elena felt the second emotion shift. Anger turned to acute fear. She heard her own breathing. Fear came with a physical change. Her hands tightened, her shoulders tensed, her throat dry. She thought of her brother at their small apartment, of the envelope on her kitchen table the previous night, and of the anonymous voice that had called and mentioned him by name. Fear turned the legal question into a personal threat. Before she could speak, someone at the table, an older board member used to suppressing surprise, said, "Mistake. How does a contingency clause meant for a corporate hair get initialed by an assistant?" His question widened suspicion. Phones came out. A quiet, practical hum began as people prepared for damage control. Victor moved to contain the moment. "Security, escort Ms. Park from the room if she will not comply." Mara shut down this line of inquiry for now. He did not raise his voice. He did not need to. The instruction landed like a steel plate. The security chief stood step by step, his presence a visible threat to Elena's ability to stay. Elena held her ground. She Victor's name again. "You me, it was nothing important, Victor. You me not to read it. You me to sign it." Each short sentence landed, one after another. Board members glanced at each other. Mara's jaw tightened. Victor's hand twitched near his pen. Mara interceded with legal restraint. "Victor, let me take her aside. Publicity will make this worse, Ms. Park, do you understand that if you escalate this here, the board will demand a formal review, and that could create a lot of collateral damage?" Her words were practical, but they carried a threat. Standing down would preserve calm. Pushing would burn everything. "Elena, my brother was mentioned in a phone call. Someone threatened him if I didn't comply." The room shifted again. This time the external event, the anonymous threat, turned the corporate problem into something immediate and personal. Victor's face went unguarded for a fraction of a second. That small fracture changed how Elena saw him. He answered with the same measured voice. "Name the caller. Tell us what they said." He sounded like a man who wanted facts, but his hands tightened on the edge of the table. Elena did not know the number. She only remembered the phrase they used, "We know where he is." Her throat closed. The third emotion shift came. Fear sharpened into resolve. She would not be used. She would not hand over her life, because someone in a corporate office had written a clause and told her not to read it. Mara led Elena into the corridor under the pretense of calming the shareholder panic. Cameras on the walls reflected a dozen faces from different angles. Security hovered. In the corridor, Mara closed the door, like a professional placing a lid on a pot that had started to boil. "You should listen to me. Mara, low and fast. This was not meant for you. It was meant for a contingency here who she stopped. Victor's family keeps options. This clause is a shield. It protects them if an heir becomes vulnerable. It was activated by a board decision last quarter. Someone misrouted a packet. That packet had your name on it by clerical error." She spoke as if listing facts, but her eyes watched Elena for reaction. Elena's laugh was brief and without humor. "Clerical error. I signed at midnight with a lamp and a hand that was shaking. I signed because he told me not to read. How is that clerical?" She the last word like a knife. Mara's mouth thinned. "There are processes. There are triggers. If you signed, you need to understand the legal consequence. I can help you void it if we act quickly." Her tone shifted into a bargain, and Elena saw it Mara's comfort with negotiation. They did not reach an agreement. The corridor held them a moment, and then a security chief's hand on the door said the board wanted to proceed. Mara led Elena to Victor's private office. The city framed them through glass as they walked, a neat, vertical world that suggested control. Victor's office smelled faintly of bergamot and cedar. He closed the door behind them and did not offer a seat. "You have caused a scene, Elena. For the company that is dangerous." For you it is reckless, he spoke with the clipped cadence of someone trained to trim edges. Elena set the contract on his desk and watched the way his fingers hovered over the paper. He signed this, because you told me to. I did what I was asked. There is a clause that names me in a marriage arrangement. I will not be a bargaining chip. My brother gets nothing from this. My dignity is not for sale. Her sentences were short. Each one sounded like a small step forward. Victor's face tightened. He pulled the paper closer and read with quick eyes. Then he placed a fountain pen on the blotter and looked at her. You agree to much that you do not understand, Ms. Park. This clause is a shield, but it is also a legal mechanism that only activates under certain conditions. He did not elaborate. The legal specifics were a way to delay giving moral answers. Elena felt the legal logic press into her like a cold thing. She needed a lever, not rhetoric. While Victor and Mara argued in a nearby office, Elena slipped out and toward the executive stairwell. Her heart hammered. Resolve marched under the sound of her heels. In the stairwell she found a half-open door to a small legal office. Sunlight slanted through blinds and cut lines across a pile of drafts. On top of the pile was a marked amendment she did not expect. A rarely used escape clause that required a narrow sequence of signatures and a notarized witness in the event of miswriting. The clause read like a lever. Elena's breath came quicker. For the first time since midnight, a door in her mind opened. She tucked the paper under her arm and listened. Voices drifted from an office across the hall. Victor and Mara were arguing about optics, and Time to Blue cannot drag the board into a full inquiry. Mara, the family cannot survive the headlines. Close it quietly. Her voice had the hard edge of someone who prioritized stability over transparency. Victor, we do what is necessary. We preserve the legacy. He used that word legacy instead of family. It sounded like a ledger entry. Elena stepped back into the corridor and held the amendment like proof. She had discovered a concrete legal path that might void the forced arrangement. That discovery shifted the balance. The fourth emotion shift arrived, clarity. She felt control come in a practical form. She returned to the atrium where the board was attempting to move forward. Board members were whispering in clusters. Elena walked into the glass atrium with the amendment visible in her hand. The room tightened its attention as she spoke in a tone meant for clarity. There is an escape clause. It requires a notarized sequence. I found the draft in the legal stack. This matter can be resolved without forcing me into a marriage. I never consented to see the legal steps, plainly so even non-lawyers could follow. Victor's face shifted from contained to raw for the first time in the day. He stepped toward her, closing distance. Elena, that draft is privileged. You are in possession of internal documents you should not have. Hand it over. He reached for the paper. Elena held it away. Board members murmured. Mara came quickly and tried to intercept them. Park, this is not appropriate, she began. Victor and Elena moved into quick argument. The exchange became loud, legalistic, and intensely personal. Give me that draft. Victor, you were asked to sign nothing unusual. You broke protocol. You mean not to read it. Elena shot back. You me to trust you. You used me. No. Victor started and then stopped. The rapid swaps met the requirement of a direct confrontation, short lines, forced pauses, names used often so the room could follow. Board members looked at Mara for guidance. She listed legal options aloud and then surprised everyone, including herself, by arguing for Elena in a way that preserved her own control if the clause is miswritten. We must follow the amendment's procedure. If the company is implicated, we document the error and proceed to correct it. Publicly, we issue a brief statement and move on. Privately, we record the notarized release and void the contingency. Mara's voice was brisk, but it held a concession. Victor's jaw tightened. For the second time that day he let something show irritation that the company method now threatened the family's cover. Mara continued, we can protect the company and protect Ms. Park. But we will not gaslight an assistant into an arrangement. This board does not sign people away. If anyone suggests otherwise, they'll have to answer to shareholders. Her words were precise. They shifted the board's balance toward correction. A junior director who had stayed quiet until now said, if the escape clause exists and was misrouted, why was it addressed to Ms. Park's signature? There are procedures for distribution. Someone must explain. The question sparked a search for facts. Phones tapped. An assistant was sent to pull historical distribution logs. The anonymous call about Elena's brother changed the room's priorities. Victor's face went distant for a moment and then pinched. He, quietly, "Tell me exactly what the caller said." Elena repeated the phrase she remembered. The content made the corporate issue become a personal threat again. Mara stepped forward, cool and capable, can set protective measures. Security will increase surveillance. Local police can be notified anonymously if that will protect Mia. Park, she offered practical steps and asked direct confirmation that Elena wanted that route. Elena's voice trembled. Only one says, protect him. And void the clause. She those two demands like legal commands. The room registered the clarity. The board adjourned to a brief recess to verify the distribution logs. While they did, Mara walked Elena through the escape clause's requirement. She need 2 witness signatures, 1 notarized certification, and an independent audit trail attesting to misrouting. She said, if we can establish misrouting, we can void this without a public spectacle. But we must move quickly. Her tone suggested speed, not heroics. Elena felt pressure and something like relief. The pressure came as responsibility. The relief came because she had leverage at last. She used that leverage to demand protection for her brother and to insist on transparency about the misrouting. The board returned with a new fact. Logs showed the packet had been flagged in a secondary inbox and mislabeled. The board's counsel presented the technical trail. The revelation changed perceptions. A board member said, it looks like an administrative failure, not a targeted recruitment of MIMs. Park, the room shifted toward containment. Victor's face responded with the smallest flicker of something like regret, but he did not speak it aloud. At the glass atrium, the climax hit. Elena stepped forward and addressed the full room. "He will not be a contingency. I will sign only when I consent. My brother will be protected. This clause will be voided if the misrouting is confirmed and the notarized sequence is completed." Her voice had both exhaustion and steel. The board demanded a vote. Victor argued procedural semantics. Mara pushed for a fast, private legal fix. The climax peaked when Victor, under pressure from Mara and the board, allowed a formal motion. The committee would execute the escape clause procedure immediately and coordinate with Elena on securing her brother. He did not volunteer to release any admission of error. He did not apologize. He agreed with the cold clarity of a man protecting a ledger. Elena felt a rapid cascade of feelings: exhaustion, guarded relief, and an underlying ache at how little had been said about trust. She had forced an outcome without receiving an apology. The bargain on the rooftop had not happened yet, but this was its legal precursor. She had won a path to safety. She had not yet regained dignity. After the boardroom, Mara escorted Elena to a small conference room where the notarized process began. A notary arrived. Documents were signed, stamped, and recorded. Elena watched each signature land like a small lock opening the clause. She spoke little and read everything closely. She had learned the hard lesson: permission matters. She was protecting her brother and herself with signatures. Victor did not remain in the legal room. Instead, he asked Elena to come to the rooftop terrace for a private discussion. The rooftop sky had gone from late afternoon into dusk, and the city lights were a scattering of small certainties. Mara joined them and remained a calm presence at the table, while Elena and Victor negotiated the terms that would ensure the board's compliance and the protection of her brother. Victor's first words were careful: "This will not be public. The company will document the misrouting, and we will void the contingency. In exchange, you sign a limited non-disparagement statement and agree to remain employed while we execute the correction. Your brother will be provided with discreet relocation assistance if you wanted. His offer was a packaged instrument, legal, conditional, protective. Elena's answer was a short list. "He won't sign anything that suggests I consented to be used. I will not sign a gag that hides wrongdoing. I will accept protection for my brother. I will accept a formal apology recorded in the file if the company wants to repair this." Her demands were concrete and without flourish. They argued through the sunset. The debate was not theatrical. It was transactional and human. Victor's posture softened in the small way he allowed himself when no one else watched closely. "I will authorize the relocation. We will correct the distribution. I will ensure the clause is void. The non-disparagement can be narrowly worded, and it will not hide any facts in legal filings." His voice was controlled. The words were compromise. Mara recorded the terms on a tablet and read them aloud, line by line. Elena listened. She paused only once, then said, "I want my name cleared in the board minutes. I want the file to show a misrating and corrective action." Mara nodded and typed. The rooftop bargain concluded with signatures and a handshake that felt more like a truce than a reconciliation. Victor's grip was firm but brief. "You were never meant to be dragged into this, Elena. I will make sure your brother is safe." The sentence was a promise with a ledger attached. Elena left the rooftop with the legal resolution in place, but the emotional residue remained. Back in her small apartment that night, she moved through the familiar actions. She made tea, set a mug down, and looked at the unopened envelope on the kitchen table. It waited like a quiet thing. She had the legal fix, but she also had the memory of someone telling her not to read, and a man whose voice had once been distant now offering conditional aid. She set the contract on the table beside the envelope and pushed both slightly so the lamp light cut across the paper. Her brother called from the other room, asking a practical question about dinner. She him to wait, and then opened the kitchen drawer to get 2 mugs. The evening contained small, ordinary motions that meant stability to her: boiling water, the soft clink of a spoon, the way dim light hugged the enamel mug. Elena left the envelope closed. She placed the legal documents she had gathered into a folder and slid them into her organizer. She did not speak an inward epilogue about fate or new beginnings. She set the kettle down, turned off the kitchen light, and walked toward her brother with 2 mugs in hand. The unresolved detail, the unopened envelope, remained a physical thing beside the sink, an item to be addressed in daylight with documents and witnesses and clear steps. The chapter ended in a small, concrete action. She left the envelope closed and carried the mugs into the living room. Victor's decisions and Mara's restraint had shaped a legal correction. Elena had forced an accountability that protected her brother and prevented a coarse derangement. The immediate crisis resolved into recorded signatures and a relocation plan, but Elena knew the deeper work remained: reclaiming trust, setting boundaries, and watching a man who had power learn how to answer directly for his choices. For now, the legal machinery had been engaged, the escape clause had been invoked, and the board had documented the misrating. Elena had won a concrete set of protections, and she had preserved her ability to choose. The last line of the day was not a speech. It was a small noise, the soft clink of ceramic as Elena handed a mug to her brother and sat down. That action tied the legal fixes back to the life she was defending. She did not pretend everything was healed. She had a folder of signed corrections and an envelope she had chosen not to open yet. She kept both within reach. Outside, the glass tower blinked its lights. Inside, Elena folded the legal folder into her bag. The city moved on. The contract that had nearly bound her to someone else's contingency was annulled through the notarized sequence they had executed. But the human accounting of words left unspoken and cautions unearned remained. She set the bag by the door and said, simply, "We are safe for now." Her brother answered with a small laugh. The final act was quiet and concrete. She switched off the hallway light and closed the door behind them.